The Mystery of the Cupboard by Lynne Reid Banks, Chapter 5, Family Stuff. Gilly! Oh, what? Sorry to interrupt. What are you doing, anyway? Homework? Said Gillian virtuously. No, you're not. Are you really? If I don't, I'm seriously stitched up. It's last week's. Pitbull tear me to pieces. Ah, Mr. Pitt was indeed fiercer than Mr. Butcher. What did you want? Asked Gillian. Just to ask you something, you know, the cupboard. The precious cupboard taking up space in the bank safe, yeah? Where did you get it? Gillian was silent for a long moment, too long. Then he said, I told you at the time. Found it in an alley behind our old house. Our old house, the one before last. No, you didn't. Gillian sat at his desk without turning, but there was something about the back of his neck that told Audrey he was right. How did you know? I just do. Tell me where you got it, really. Gillian turned his swivel chair. Listen, he began. Then he stopped, frowned, and said, What's up with you? You look funny. Funny how? I don't know, as if you're zonked out. Look. So what if I made it up about the alley? I didn't pretend I'd paid for it. I just said I'd found it, and that was true. I thought the alley would make it more sort of interesting. Go on. Well, I found it in our basement, among a whole lot of stuff. Most of it was just junk. Ask me, the cupboard was junk too. Only you had gone on secret drawers and boxes and stuff, and I thought you might think it was a bit of fun. I was skint at the time. It was the best I could do for a birthday present for you. I didn't expect you to go crazy over it. Whose was it? Mum's, I suppose. All the junk that collects in our houses is hers. And did you ask her, if you could have it to give me? Well, no, I didn't think she'd miss it. And she never recognized it, did she? She never knew she had it. This was evidently true. His mother hadn't flickered an eyelid when Audrey had unwrapped Gillian's present. It was because she had such a lot of stuff, half of it just bunged down in the cellar, or in the next house, in the attic, without much sorting. His mother just couldn't throw anything away. When they'd moved here to this much smaller house with no attics or cellars, she'd stored all of her family stuff, as she'd called it, in the outbuilding that had once been a pigsty. Family stuff. He went to look for his mother and found her feeding the hens. She looked so countrified, scattering the corn with great sweeps of her arm, like the sower of seed in the picture. Audrey would have laughed if he hadn't been feeling so solemn. Mum? Yes, darling. All your family stuff. Oh, don't talk about it. I really must sort it out one of these days. She'd been saying that at intervals as long as Audrey could remember. Where did it come from? My grandmother, mostly. Her name was Maria, wasn't it? Yes, Granny Maria, I used to call her. When did she die? Oh, not till I was grown up. Adiel was a baby. I have a photo somewhere of her holding him in her arms. She was really old, well into her 80s. So Maria was not wanting for her sister on the other side. Jessica Charlotte herself would have had a long wait, nearly 20 years, for the chance to explain. Explain what? Audrey had to stop reading the notebook for the moment. He felt too wound up. The story was too strong for him to take in much at a time. That poor old lady dying all alone like that, feeling so bad, now getting himself ready to read on. He was doing some investigating. What about your grandfather? Matt. Poor Matt. Well, I never knew him. He died long before my time, and my mother was only a child. Lottie. Yes. Did he die abroad? His mother looked at him curiously. No, he spent years in the colonies as an ambassador. But no, he died in London in an accident. Terribly sad. Granny Marie never got over it. Just think of losing your husband, and then your only daughter in the bombing. She had you. Yes, and I loved her. But we were very hard up. Matt's pension was pitifully small. We rented a little house in the East End, and Granny Marie had to work until she was quite old. It was a hard life for her, but she never let me feel it. I had a very happy childhood, thanks to her. Audrey went back upstairs. Gillian met him at the top. Don't you want to watch TV? Rats to Homework. There's a great film on. "No, thanks," said Audrey. "I'm busy." He piled the bricks against his doors again and went to the window. The sun was sinking behind the hills in front of the house. There was one special hill, with a little crown of trees that grew in a cluster, in odd shapes, all spready and twisted. Omri wanted to go up there one day and see what they were all like close to. With school and everything, and the thatching, there hadn't been much time to explore. Now, when he looked at the view, he thought of Jessica Charlotte looking at the same one. Which had been her bedroom? Not this one. Gion's, he felt sure of it. He found the box and the notebook at the gable end of the house. She must have hidden it in the eaves outside her window, the last window of the long house. He unearthed the cash box from its hiding place and looked at it again. The coin slot was bunged up with some hard red stuff. Omri thought it might be sealing wax. He'd seen it on documents in museums. Ordinary people used it to seal their letters with in the old days. Why would she seal it? To keep the damp out, of course. He shook the box gently, trying to guess what was in it. There were a number of things in there, but they seemed to be wrapped because they slid about whisperingly. They didn't rattle. Of course, he could break it open, but he didn't want to. She'd sealed and locked it and hidden it for him, for someone in the family with a mind more open to find in years to come. When he had read the rest of the notebook, he would know whether she wanted him to open it, and how it could be done. He put the box away again, and with a strange, solemn feeling of destiny. Yes, destiny, this was meant to happen. He pulled his desk chair close to the window and opened the notebook at the place where he had left off. After Frederick was born, I had to work. It was not merely to fulfill my ambition and my talent then. I had a hungry baby with no father to feed him, so I had to do whatever came to hand. I won't recount everything I did in those years to earn money. On the stage, off the stage, it was a strange life. One week I would be topping the bill at some provincial music hall, the crowd at my feet, the stage door Johnnies bringing me flowers and sweets and trinkets and making much of me. The next I might be behind a bar in some city pub, joking with the customers and pretending to drink the drinks they bought me, but secretly pocketing their money and wetting my lips with the cold tea I kept under the bar. Once I scrubbed steps. No matter. Let the past bury its dead. Frederick, who spent his babyhood in a Moses basket under many theatrical dressing tables, grew up to hate the business, but he grew straight and strong, and with a will of iron. I thought I had little to be satisfied with him. I thought I had cause to be satisfied with him at least. Little did I know what a strange man my child would grow into. And Maria, my lucky spoiled sister, married her Matthew at last, and had Lottie. Charlotte was christened. Not after me, of course, the family black sheep, but after our grandmother. But I was there. I crept into the church at Maria's secret bidding, in my sober Sunday clothes, with a big brimmed hat pulled well down so no one would know me. Father and mother were both dead by then, but our other relatives hadn't seen me for 10 hard aging years. I hid behind a pillar and pretended I was holding the baby, that she was my godchild. Godmother, me. What nonsense, when all the best parts of my life have been make-believe. And I looked at Matthew, Maria's Matthew. Matthew stood by the font, tall as a soldier, handsome and generous and good. I could have loved him myself. I did love him, not least because he didn't cast me out. Of course, he never acknowledged me publicly, but he never forbade me to come to their house to visit Maria and Lottie when no one else was there. Of course, I never brought Frederick. That would never have done. Maria never knew Frederick, never asked about him. She played the game called It Never Happened. Those were happy days. I played with my little niece and came to love her then. Beautiful, sweet Lottie, my namesake, my darling. But my life was hard. I never told Maria how hard, and of course she never visited me in my sordid lodgings. She was so happy. She didn't want to know anything unpleasant about my life, and I never told her. But as I watched her growing more beautiful and more beloved in wifehood and motherhood, the old bitterness raised its head again. Once more all I had were crumbs from her table, crumbs of happiness spilled from her overflowing life. And one day, as I sat in her elegant parlour, playing with Lottie, who was then about 5, Maria said, very casually, but as if she had been preparing it for a long time. Of course, Jessie, when Lottie is a bit more grown up, it won't do for you to see her so much of her. Matt's a good Christian, but there's a limit to tolerance. I felt her words like a knife. I would be a bad influence? That's what she was saying? That I would contaminate Lottie's life? I put Lottie, who had been at my knee, down very carefully and stood up. My sister must have seen in my eyes how deeply wounded I was, for she said quickly, "Come along now, darling, don't take me up like that. I don't mean now. I just wanted to say, to get you used to the idea that one day I should have followed my impulse and left then, and never come back. But I couldn't. Frederick was already showing signs of hostility to me that would pain me so much when he was a man. I needed this other home. I needed Maria and her crumbs of love. I needed Lottie. I needed the glimpses I got of Matthew. Crumbs indeed, but I was so hungry. Yet the iron entered my soul. A deep bitterness about the differences between us. My idea, my terrible, wicked idea came to me soon afterwards, when the shadow of her words about Lottie was still darkening my heart. No excuses, I said, no excuses. Tell the tale. We were in Maria's boudoir. Yes, she had one, a room all to herself, for her to dress in and do her hair and entertain her friends, and be herself, a room of feminine fancies and personal things, where even Matthew did not come without a knock, and she was showing me her jewellery. It was kept in a special jewel case, a piece of bare-faced luxury that Matthew had brought her on their wedding trip to Florence in Italy. It was red leather tooled in gold, lined with red satin, with little trays that lifted apart on delicate hinges, and at every level were the tokens of Matthew's love for her and our mother's, for Mamma had left all her pretty things to Maria. I, in my disgrace, had been left nothing. There was plenty there that I would have liked. A pearl necklace, 2 gold lockets, an emerald bracelet, even a fine diamond pin, Mamma's wedding present from Papa that she had once said should come to me, but then, in the bottom, I saw them. A pair of earrings. Beautiful, oh yes, they were, but more than that. They held my eyes like buttons in buttonholes. They were aquamarines, like 2 tear-shaped drops of sea-water. Not our grey sea, no, but like the seas of the south that I had seen paintings of. Blue-green, clear, without a flaw. They hung from 2 gold hooks, and I wanted them. I wanted them. To me they suddenly stood for all Maria had, and that I had not. All she wanted to shut me out from when my Lottie would be older, not least her purity. My sister was pure as a perfect jewel. I made up my mind in that single instant that those earrings would be mine, and I knew clearly that there was only one way that could happen. I would steal them, and that is where we will pause.